3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome back. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for joining us. Another episode of Catching Up with Jacob. And Jacob, there's so much stuff in the world. I'm glad you're here. How you feeling
I'm glad
today?
I'm here too, but I'm also glad we're leaving. And the real catching up, the harpazo, the rapture.
We're going to be caught up with the Lord in the air. Amen to that. Well, so blessed to have you, brother. So blessed to be with you, and so blessed to be with everyone else that's tuning in. And thank you for being with us, those who are live and those who are watching it afterwards.
Amen.
Amen. Jacob, before we get started, you got anything on your mind you want to just get it out of the way now, and then we can move on to the subjects?
Yes, after a year and a half of COVID delays, plus a lot of bureaucratic hassles, our orphanage in India, the Moriel Orphanage in India, has finally opened. Mark Jackson is there because of COVID restrictions. Others of us could not get there so easily, but the work is absolutely beautiful, and it has begun. A few things need to be done bureaucratically with the local government, but after a year and a half of delays due to COVID, it's operational. So we do thank God that it is operational. These kids obviously are from the outcasts of the caste system. They're known as Dalit children. They're seen as subhuman virtually in the Hinduistic belief that they're not even part of the caste system. They have no hope. And we want to give them a hope because the hope is in Jesus. So please pray for a new work in India. We see the world falling to pieces, but in the meantime, we occupy the time and continue the work of the gospel as long as we can until he comes, or at least we work while we have the day, for night is coming when no man can work.
Amen, Jacob. Amen. So if you want more information, I need to go to moriel.org. There's information about the orphanage in India, but we'll soon be releasing more information about what's really going on in there. We appreciate Mark. I know Mark, and he's been a blessing to the Moriel family and those that know him and those that you've known him for a long time, Jacob. So it's been a blessing that he's taken on that work. So pray for Mark, pray for the work in India, not only there, but all the works that Moriel is involved in. If you want more information, go to the Moriel website. You see all the works that the Lord has put on for us to do, to be good stewards of our money and time. The Philippines, Thailand, India, Israel, on and on. So very good stuff.
Amen.
Amen. A couple of things before we get started, Jacob, is I want to go over the podcast schedule just to make sure everybody knows it's been so popular. People have requested more and more of these. So we're glad to provide good Bible study. So tomorrow, it's going to be Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah. I love that study, by the way. That's one of my first ones I ever heard from Jacob. So we go back in time. That was a very, very good study. So get a hold of
chapter 7 and 8.
On 7 and 8. I probably never heard anybody talk about the things that are in that audio except for Jacob Prash. So get a hold of that. It's a beautiful study. On Sunday, yours truly in James chapter 5, patience and endurance for the coming of the Lord. That's 2 parts. We'll play the next part next week. But patience and endurance, that's what we really need, don't we, Jacob? Patience and endurance for the coming of the Lord. It's not easy. And we're going to be talking about today, it's not going to be easy. I don't want to be doomsdayers or saying things that are going to be doom and gloom, but we do have the greatest hope. We do have the greatest future. But for us to have that, it's patience and endurance is necessary. On Monday, this episode will be played on podcast. On Tuesday, Tuesday, there's nothing there at that point. But on Wednesday, there'll be Sandy's Confessions of a False Teacher on Joyce Meyer. So I encourage everyone to get that study on Joyce Meyer. There's a lot of false teachers that have been playing a prevalent role right now. And we talked about Creflo Dollar last week, that he repented. I'm not sure. Hopefully he did. But this is going to be on Joyce Meyer. On Thursday, Romans 1 from Jacob. And on Friday, Jerusalem Study, Part 4, the Coming Temple. Jerusalem and the Coming Temple. And boy, Jerusalem is on the radar today, especially with the President of the United States being there this week alone. So lots of stuff on podcasts. If you want to get a hold of the podcast, go to moriel.org. It says Moriel on the web. You can find out where Moriel is. It's all the platforms, but also the podcast. And on this channel, you can go to the about of this channel. You can find all the links on Buzzsprouts, iTunes, Spotify, you name it. You can find Jacob Prasch. And Jacob's kind of hard to get a hold of when he used to travel a lot. Now we can find him on audio, on video. So platforms are developing, and a new platform is developing. So praise God, that will be coming soon. So keep us in prayer for that. Amen. Jacob, let's get started. Let's catch up. Let's do it. Jacob, the corruption, I would tell you this, it just baffles me. I don't even have words for it. The corruption in the United States with the president, every week, it's like an all-time high. His polls are an all-time low every week, but the corruption is an all-time high. And this is, of course, disseminated throughout the whole world, because what happens here affects the world as well. The corruption keeps getting worse and worse. Ronnie Jackson, Obama's ex-physician, says he's not going to finish his term. His corruption is through the roof. I mean, you have his son, his phone got hacked. All kinds of stuff is coming out from his phone. It's literally cracks and hookers. That really should be his life, called Cracks and Hookers. There's a song that came out by a Christian artist. Hunter Biden got hacked, and it's top 10 in the iTunes hit in terms of popularity, top 10. What in the world is this? The dumpster fire? Are the Dems and the left trying to get rid of him? Because it just seems no way to turn the ship around. I'll leave it up to Jacob. Go ahead, Jacob.
Okay. First of all, it's a two-tier avalanche of corruption. The first tier is the one you obviously accurately described. Can you imagine if a son of Donald Trump or any conservative or any libertarian was caught in crack deals with hookers, and if Trump took oil from the American National Emergency Oil Reserve and sold it to China, to a company of which his son with the crack and hookers was financially involved. That is the first level of corruption. The second level of corruption is CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, the BBC, the New York Slimes, the Washington Compost, take your pick. They give this a pass. They play it down. They would ignore it if they could. And they only focus on things about January 6th or something else of this nature. It is managed news. It is editorialized news. It's not even news. It's not even fake news. It's absurd. It's Pravda. It's Izvestia. That is the real corruption. That is unbelievable, that the media underreports it or ignores it. The dual standards are phenomenal. You had a president falsely accused of collusion with Russia, and they treated it as if it was a fact that he was guilty. And they find out that Clinton was on back of it.
Yes.
And her lawyer gets a walk because of an Obama-appointed judge, even though he was proven guilty virtually by the facts. There's no justice. Eric Holder did not have his house surrounded by FBI agents with automatic weapons when he was in contempt of Congress. It's just a two-tier justice system, a complete corruption of the FBI and of the Justice Department. It always was corrupt, going back to Hoover, but it's become corrupt on steroids under Eric Gardner. It's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. What's basically happened with the present Justice Department. But it's happened with Garland. It's
yes.
Unbelievable what has happened. How the media stands by and underreports this obvious fiasco of corruption, of open crime. A slime ball with a cigarette hanging out with a hooker, measuring illegal drugs on a scale and arguing with the whore about how much it is. This is the president's son. He's involved in business deals in China, and his father is taking American oil in an oil crisis and selling it to the Chinese through a company his son's involved with, and he gets away with it. The media doesn't even report it. There are two levels of corruption. I watched the hypocrisy of Don Lemon warning about the Republicans and saying they shouldn't be treated equally. No, I'm not a Republican, I'm an independent. But the unbelievable lies and hypocrisy.
Yes.
It's just truth becomes a lie, lie becomes the truth. It's like Isaiah said, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Woe to them. And the stupid white liberals, educated white liberals, people who are capable of intellectually digesting the truth and analyzing it objectively, are not doing so.
Yeah.
They'd rather just lie and lie to themselves.
Yeah, Jacob, is this white guilt? I mean, what drives them? I mean, you see a lot of, especially females, especially white women, Anglo-Saxon women, that are tremendously leftist. They're just absolutely hell-bent on leftism, Marxism policies. They support Biden and all his policies, whether sex education, sex change, even pedophilia, to the point where you got drag queen shows on kids in the schools. They yet support it. Then you have minority Hispanics, African Americans, who don't support it, who say this is crazy. So,
and you have blue collar Democrats who see through it and are against it.
Yes,
but the elitists impose it.
Yeah. So
this is exactly what happened in Sovietism. If you want to understand it, read about Sovietism.
Yeah, even the First Lady, Jill Biden, Jill, comparing Hispanics to tacos. I mean, I'm not a big taco guy. That's not where I came from, but we had other stuff. But to hear that, it's laughable how they backtrack it. I mean, if somebody else would have said it, it would have been game over.
Yeah, there was a Puerto Rican girl in New York I fancied, and I called her my little enchilada, but I wouldn't have said it publicly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
what a stupid thing to say.
In the midst of all this, and yet, like Ms. Flores in Texas, who just won that district, she's calling for the federal government to help and intervene of the invasion that's going on in the southern border. These are Hispanics who are saying, "Help!" But yet nothing comes from it.
My mother's family was Irish Catholic, and I was in Ireland just last week, the Republic of Ireland, where my mother's family comes from. The Irish had a staple diet of potatoes because the soil in Ireland, it's only good for grazing. It's not good for growing anything except for potatoes. So that was the staple for the Irish people. And when the potato famine happened, they starved, and they had to go transatlantic or to England to survive, or else they just starved. Okay, so a mick, what they ate, they call them potato-eating micks. You know what I mean? They associated the potato with the Irish, in a derogatory way. Well, the same. She did the same thing. Now, her husband is Irish descent, but she does the same thing with the tacos. Why not let the Hispanics speak for themselves? Like this. Why not let the Hispanics speak for themselves?
That's right. That's right. Jacob, what do you take of this? This is more of a cultural thing, but the Christian rapper, self-proclaimed, Make America Great rapper, has had 2 hits in the top 10 this year alone with Let's Go Biden, and now Hunter Biden Hack, which is talking about the iCloud that was hacked and all kinds of stuff that they've been leaking out of that, and it's corrupt beyond measure. But what does it tell you about culture and society where 2 songs about the president and his corruption and his senility make the top 10?
It tells me that we are back to the Soviet Union, only its location has switched. What Pravda said, what Izvestia said, what Radio Moscow said, what the mainstream media said in Russia or the Soviet Union didn't matter. The people cared about what they heard on Radio Free Europe. You know what I'm saying? They heard about what they heard on the underground mediums.
Yes.
And the government of Russia, the KGB, would have these massive, massive broadcasting antennas to interfere with the Radio Free Europe signals, and they get things like buzzsaws and play them on the same frequency, so the static and noise would be so much people couldn't hear it. They tried to silence the free transmission, expression, reporting of news and analysis. That's what they did. Well, now they do the same thing, only it's Zuckerberg and Dorsey and Twitter and Facebook banning people who don't subscribe to the party line.
Yeah.
But they're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. The concern that I have, Jacob, of course, is not only the corruption, but this is like a nation under judgment. If we haven't recognized that, I don't know if Christians have even recognized that, that we are a nation under, God's dealing with us. And you can complain about all the things that are going on. You can laugh about the president. You can, look at his son and all. But at the end of the day, spiritually speaking, where are we? I mean, I don't think we can answer that question. Many Christians perhaps can answer that question, but as a nation, where are we?
Again, what I've been saying is that the East went West and the West went East. Federalism collapsed in Eastern Europe. Czech Republic, Yugoslavia, Soviet Union, all these federal states collapsed. Western Europe is trying to promote a federalism that already failed in Eastern Europe. The East went West, the West went East. Yeah. Well, in Russia, if you understand what Russia, I was in Russia right after the Iron Curtain came down, but I knew a lot of Russian Jews who managed to get out and came to Israel. And some of them were believers and were friends of mine. And I probably learned as much from talking to them as I did from anybody else about what Russia was really like, what was really happening under the communists. And what it was is this: there were people called the apartchik, and they were party members. They tended to be educated, and they towed the party line. They subscribed to the narrative. The average Russian or Soviet worker didn't. The Soviet worker were told it's a worker's paradise, and they kept telling them how good they have it and how bad the West is and everything. And the apartchik knew it was a lie, but it was in their self-interest to support the narrative, to support the lie. Well, that is exactly what's happening now with white liberals and the Western media. Exactly. If you go back and you read Gulag Archipelago, or Darkness at Noon by Arthur Kessler, if you understand what happened in the Soviet Union, you see what's begun to happen now in the West.
Unbelievable.
And obviously Orwell, 1984.
1984.
People know about that.
It's insane, some of these policies, Jake. I'll give you one example. You and I watched that Senator Hawley, Josh Hawley, deal with a professor from Berkeley, a law professor from Berkeley, about, well, they were talking about abortion and the issue of Roe v. Wade, but she made it about transphobia, violence, just because you question it. This is where we are today as a nation. The radical left has become so ingrained into this this idea that if you disagree, if you question it, right? And now now they resort to violence. This is the scary part. Whether or not we laugh about it, they are hell bent on violence if you don't agree with it.
She was not a Ray Brown black lawyer. He was the best criminal lawyer in New Jersey in my youth. She was not a Johnny Cochran defense attorney.
Yes.
She was an affirmative action lawyer who works in academia. She could never really make it in court or in the secular practice of law competitively. She's just an affirmative action academic or pseudo-academic. That's what she is. And I've known some good black lawyers. She's in the vein of Obama, that kind of thing. Just somebody appointed by affirmative action policies into an academic position.
Yeah.
Okay. And only knows the rhetoric, but she wouldn't be any good in court. Okay. Well, that's what she is. Okay. To have a woman who supposedly is a lawyer, and my daughter's a lawyer, my son's a lawyer, to not know evidentially the difference between a double X chromosome and an XY chromosome, and one can get pregnant and one can't. That's the evidence. That's the proof. And as a lawyer, completely avoids the issue. Completely avoids the actual issue of biological, that is chromosomal male or female, who can have a baby and who can't.
That's right.
This is something that began with Darwinism. When you question Darwinism on the basis of science, not theology, just on the basis of science, they would begin to say you're non-scientific. Wait a minute, deal with the evidence. But they couldn't deal with the evidence. They would just yell, you're not being scientific because you believe in a creation story in the Bible. You're irrational. You're this. They wouldn't deal with creation science. Well, now they're doing the same thing with so-called gender identity. They're not dealing with chromosomal reality. And these people are considered to be academics.
Yep.
And as Paul said, professing to be wise, they become fools.
Amen.
But notice at her arrogance, her stupidity, but her racism, her arrogance, her stupidity, but also look at her Olinskyism. Don't deal with the issue.
Yeah.
Make it about you're a transphobe. I don't like your line of questioning. You're transphobic. 1 out of 5 transsexual people die, and you're promoting this transphobia that's killing them. Would you please answer the question, dear? It's how to avoid the question.
Yes.
That's what it is. But there's enough stupid people incapable of seeing through it. Or people who are capable of seeing through it who prefer not to be a part of change.
Yeah.
White liberals.
That's right.
If America could have a queen, a real queen, I would vote. I would make it Candace Owen. But of course, I have so much respect and admiration for Candace Owen and others. The deputy governor of Virginia being another. You know what I mean? But because you disagree with a black woman, you're therefore a racist and you are a sexist. Well, wait a minute. I'm a big fan of Candace Owen, and but she's a Aunt Jemima. Of course you would, because she betrays her people to the white establishment. No, the white establishment are the liberals that you've betrayed your people to.
Amen to that, Jacob. Amen to that. So, Jacob, do you think the Dems or the left is done with Biden? I mean, the corruption is so deep. Can they recover? Are they going to try to recover? Are they going to try to do something about it?
It's not just the corruption. It is the fact that he is cognitively incoherent.
Yeah.
And they know that. Now, what happens? Remember, it was Rayburn and those guys, or Clyburn, who pushed Biden into the White House. He was not a popular candidate.
Yeah.
And Harris was not popular.
No,
but they couldn't get Hillary, and they needed somebody to stop Sanders, to stop the left. They needed an establishment Democrat, and they desperately got Biden. They scraped the bottom of the barrel because that's all they had, and they came up with him and Harris, who most Democrats didn't even want to vote for. So Clyburn put him there. The Democratic Party establishment put him there. Okay, it wasn't just Clyburn, but Clyburn was the key man. Okay, and they put him there. Now they're stuck with him. But Obama knew he was a klutz. Even when he was vice president, Obama wouldn't let him speak much.
Yeah.
During the campaign, they kept him in the basement of his house. They knew he was a half senile klutz. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's a completely senile klutz. I don't know. But they knew this. Now they're stuck with him. The spectacle I saw when Obama went to Israel, apart from the spectacle in Israel and Saudi Arabia itself, The real spectacle? When he wasn't in the White House, when he was overseas, to see Gavin Newsom with his jacket over his shoulder walking through the West Wing of the White House when Biden wasn't even there. He was paying the place a visit, checking out what he hopes is going to be his new office.
Could you imagine that? Oh, my goodness.
The vultures are obviously circling.
Yep.
They know Biden is a loser. They know he's only there because they needed somebody in desperation to stop Sanders. They know that he is senile. They know he's stupid. They know he's corrupt. They know his son is a criminal. They know it. They've always known it. So they've got to play the game. Watch Newsom, among others.
Yeah. No, I believe you're right. I believe
Newsom
among
has
others,
made a complete mess fiscally of California. He's destroyed California's financial sovereignty. He's destroyed California's fiscal integrity. It is basically, California is basically insolvent.
Yeah.
Now, it was already in trouble before he became governor, but he's compounded it. Yet, the apart sheet would back him. It's a celebrity game. It's not about policies.
That's right. Yeah. If you want homelessness, drug abuse, complete open borders, destruction of economy, destruction of everything you can think of.
And there are people who are stupid enough to vote for him. Yeah. Looking at what happened in LA and Frisco, looking at what he did, there are people who are still stupid enough to vote for him.
Yeah.
Like the women on the people who watch the View with those stupid women.
Oh man, yeah. It's the View is might as well be Satan's favorite favorite.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, I think they escaped from the San Diego Zoo. You know?
Now, Jacob, one thing the left has been promoting lately, and this is what's coming, and it is at the behest of the WHO, is that the resurgence of these doomsday scenario, another virus. We're going to have to deal with the elections coming up. We're going to have to start wearing masks again. It is complete emotionalism. Health and Human Services are all up in arms about it. LA is going, I guess they're going masks July 29th here, not too far from here. So is this a ploy to try to get a handle on the midterms again, to try to keep people from voting?
The pandemic, as we know, was politically managed. It was not managed on the basis of medical science. It was not managed in the basis of clinical reality. It was politicized. Its management was politicized, from the World Health Organization to the CDC in Atlanta, to the National Institute of Health, obviously the pharmaceutical corporations, and the comparable government ministries in the EU, plus China itself, Wuhan. It was politically managed, to a degree, politically staged. They knew these viruses were not, these vaccines were not effective. They knew the masks were largely not working. They knew all of these things, but they still promoted it anyway. And if anybody questioned the science, they attacked them. That includes the person who invented the mRNA synthetic manufacture of viral immunants, of Robert Malone, the Nobel laureate from the Pasteur Institute, and the chief research pharmacological scientist of Pfizer. And they ignored these people. They ignored the leading scientists in the world who were at the forefront of this particular area of virology, clinical virology. They ignored them, and the media ignored them. It was all handled politically and by news editorialization and management and underreporting. All lies, all lies. The World Health Organization in China's pocket, all lies. Every bit of it was a lie. So now they're going to lie some more.
Yeah. It looks like Gavi, which is one of the organizations that helps the WHO, Gavi, the Global
Yeah.
Alliance for Vaccines Immunization. They came out today and said there's going to be 11 new viruses that we're going to have to deal with. 11 new ones all of a sudden. So,
And the monkeypox.
Yeah, and you see where this is going just in time for that. But it's ridiculous. Jacob, now what's your take on just on a social issue? What's your take on Novak, the tennis player, Novak Djokovic, who is the best player in the world, maybe the best player ever? He can't come to the United States because he refuses to get the medical procedure that everybody wants him to take. And he says, I know my body, I'm healthy, I'm good, I've won all these. He just beat a tennis player 15 years younger than him. He's 36, 37, which is considered a little bit old. For the seventh time, he's won. He's going to be banned for coming, even though other players who are not taking the medical procedure, but he's not allowed to come because he's refused to obey these international laws. And so he's sort of a folk hero among those who refuse to do it. But it is just ridiculous policies.
If you don't know who he is, he's like the John McEnroe of Europe.
Yes.
He comes from the former Yugoslavia. The guy he's very, very good.
Yeah, he's the best player.
He's Ash and people like that. He's absolutely remarkable. Some people say he could be the best player, like what Michael Jordan is or Larry Bird is to basketball. He might be that to tennis. That good.
That's right.
Nobody comes near him. Well, why is he being banned entry to the United States? It's political. It's purely political. They do not want celebrities opposing the party line, the narrative. They don't want it. I mean, again, the election is going to have to be considered by these people, and they certainly want to exploit pandemics or alleged pandemics to keep people from voting. That's how corrupt they are. Yeah. They'll do anything. Now, you come back to this issue of tennis. It's not just tennis, it's ESPN. The sports network is completely politicized as an outlet for woke propaganda. It's a piece of garbage. People should cancel ESPN and not watch it.
That's right. It's
the politicization of sport, and he's only one example of it. LeBron James is another. LeBron James is okay with the human rights violations in China where he's doing business. But in America, where a policeman shoots a black woman trying to murder another black woman to save the life of one black woman, he calls it a racist act. Yeah. But in China, where you have real, and the Chinese party is extremely racist.
Oh, the worst. The worst.
What they think of black people. I've seen it in Africa. The Chinese go up and they buy up businesses and they buy up everything in Zimbabwe. I've seen them in Zimbabwe, and I've seen what they did. They look down on blacks. It's a neo-colonialism of Africa by China to get the natural resources and to buy off the African politicians. It is neo-colonialism, and they look down upon blacks far worse than European colonialists ever did. Far worse. But again, LeBron James is okay with that,
Yeah. And by the way, Jacob, ESPN, who owns them is Disney. Disney owns ESPN. So it's part and parcel. Jacob, real quick, Macron just got shut down for his vaccine passports. They're not going to put him on. He was defeated, but it was sort of a narrow vote. But nonetheless, he got the votes against him. But the vaccine passports are not going to happen in France. But the WHO is doubling down. That says, new science is coming in. So take a look at the new science. It says more viruses, so which means more lockdowns, and gender is not male or female. That's the new science. So they're going to update all their manuals. They're going to update all their websites because new scientific evidence, they say. I'd like to know what that is. New scientific evidence. They're going to update it in light of this, a conceptual progress on gender, health, and development. So it's interesting how these two things that are being called science are absolutely absurd, but then the WHO is the one driving this.
Brooke, there's double X and there's XY. That's it. They can talk about gender, but they can't talk about sex because it's double X or it's XY. That's it. You've got the very rare phenomenon of super males, but that still does not mean male pregnancy. It means the opposite. Now, you know what's really interesting? While Disney pushes this agenda, China has strongly anti-homosexual and anti-bisexual and anti-transgender government policies.
Oh, yeah.
Strongly anti. Strongly anti. China is happy for the World Health Organization to promote this because they see it as destroying Western culture and civilization and creating an opening for China to fill the void. That's what's happening. And Disney will happily help them do it.
Yeah, double move. Yeah. Jacob, real quick before we move on, it's the, you see this Saudi Arabia, Muslim countries, they're also not for gender, this idea of gender fluidity and male and female can be the same and males can be pregnant, all that stuff. They obviously are even more draconian. They kill homosexuals in those countries. Nothing said about them. Nothing's ever done about it. Why? Because maybe we need their oil, we need their we need their product, that kind of stuff. So anyway,
I guarantee you, homosexual and lesbian rights will not be on the agenda when Biden is.
Yeah. Just quick for all of our viewers, please send in your questions. Send them on, and Tim will get a hold of that and send it to us. So we're going to take the questions at the end of the episode. So we're going to do a little bit different today. Normally we do it at the hour mark. We're going to take them at the end. We're going to do a rapid fire with Jacob and put him on the hot seat, and let's see what he's able to answer. Just kidding, Jacob, but we're going to do rapid fire.
Let's do it.
Hey, you're good at that, so no worries. Jacob, another thing that's on fire is the economy, and I don't mean fire in a good way. It's a dumpster fire. It's spiraling out of control. We've been at it for 2 years, since 2020, doing catching up, late 2020. And we've been warning the Federal Reserve, the printing of money. We were told it's crazy, don't cover it. The government says it's going to be fine. Biden says it's going to be fine. The Federal Reserve says no problem, transitional, temporary. It's anything but temporary. It's a monster now, and it's about to eat up several countries, including the United States. CPI came back 9.1, but that's not 9.1.
The CPI is itself a lie.
Yeah.
And the Department of Commerce and Department of Labor statistics are based on CPI. So it's a lie based on another lie. You just compound the lie, and that's what they're telling us. 9.1%.
Yep.
Try 19.1%. That's closer to the reality. Not only that, what they're not telling you is, if you look at decline of working hours and of wage scales, wages have gone down about 4.4%. Wages have gone down by about 4.4% at a time when prices have gone up about 19%. And I'm being conservative. It may be higher.
Maybe higher. Yeah. If anybody wants to do a little more research on it, go to John Williams' Shadow Stats, very good website where it tells you it counts it the way it was counted in the 70s. Right. If you do that, it is between 19 and 22. It might be higher, to your point, Jacob, but now they're doing quantitative tightening. The Feds printed all this money for 2 years, looks like a hockey stick on the M1 chart. Now they're quantitative tightening. Interest rates are going through the roof, and it is excruciatingly painful for those middle class, the poor. They can't afford anything. They can't afford to live. People living in barns and houses that are cardboard boxes just to save on money because they can't afford to live on rentals.
There will have to be a 200% point increase in the prime rate over the next year and a half. That'll have to happen.
Wow.
That makes recession inevitable.
Oh, yeah.
Now, something has been going on in Japan for some time. If you're in Tokyo and you take the high-speed train up to Narita Airport, there's two airports in Tokyo, Haneda and Narita, but Narita's well out of the town. It's like 50 miles away from Tokyo or something.
Oh, wow.
And you got a high-speed train to get to it. you see underneath these bridges, people living in boxes.
Wow.
Like big boxes that you would deliver a refrigerator in. And they're cardboard and all this stuff. And people live there. And there's a lot of them. But the society, in Japan being the kind of society it is, it always hid it. There was a huge place in the middle of Tokyo. I've not seen it, but I'd heard about it and seen films of it, where it's the same thing, huge amounts, but they hid it. It's always been in Japan, where public debt is 200% of GDP.
Yeah.
Japan's in trouble in a number of ways. But now you can't hide it in San Francisco and Los Angeles.
No.
Yet, stupidly, there's people who will still vote for Newsom.
Yeah.
Still vote for Newsom. Why are those people? Oh, they're victims? Well, to begin with, they're victims of fentanyl abuse and alcohol abuse and a lot of other things. That's to begin with. But it's going to get much, much worse.
Yeah, unfortunately.
This is going to result in food riots. Food rioting. It's going to get much, much worse in blue states.
Yeah. Yeah.
Particularly California, New York, Illinois, it's going to get much worse. It can only get worse. When the recession bites, when the Biden recession bites. Now, Biden has been trying to blame the Republicans.
Yeah.
When Trump left office, inflation was 1.4%. He already had a handle on the economic impact of the pandemic when he left office. And now it's because of Putin.
You got to have a boogeyman.
Wait, Putin, the only factor that Putin is in this for America is you made us energy dependent instead of energy independent. And instead of giving the money to Oklahoma and Texas and Dakota, you gave it to Saudi Arabia and to Putin. So, in that sense, if Putin contributed to it, it's because you gave him the keys to the car. But the media won't say anything, and it's obvious.
Yeah, it really is a pan-fam war: pandemic, famine, war. Now you got the three major factors now, and this is where we're living today. Jacob, tell me about Europe, because Europe is going through the crisis of the block currency. Is this the end of the beginning? The beginning of the end for the block currency?
For the first time ever this week, the value of the euro and dollar reached parity. In fact, for less than a day, the euro even slipped below the value of the dollar.
Yeah.
The reason the dollar is strong against the yuan and against the euro and against the British pound is not because the dollar is strong. It's just that the other currencies are weaker.
Yeah, that's right.
You win by default.
They got the uglier shirt.
The world's not dumping the dollar as the world currency reserve because there's no other currency to go to unless you make it a digitalized international currency, which the WEF would eventually like to do.
That's right.
But that's the situation. It would be much worse if these other countries' currencies were not in worse trouble than the dollar. And Germany is a mess. And if there was one single reason Germany's a mess, it is its so-called green energy policy that actually contributed to carbon emissions, that drove energy prices through the ceiling. Again, I keep coming back to this. Why do you want to go to this renewable strategy that doesn't work? It may be okay to have solar and to have wind-generated turbines and things like this as a supplement, where economically viable as a supplement. But as a primary energy source, it doesn't work for anybody except the Chinese who manufacture the solar panels. It's just a ridiculous scam. A ridiculous scam. Look at Germany. Well, the Germans have bought it on themselves. Now there's something else. You had a court in Germany determine that some Muslim Arabs who attacked Jewish sites, Jewish targets in Germany, that it was not a hate crime, it was a political statement about the occupation.
Oh.
Germany beginning to go back to its old ways against Israel. I warned that when these policies were happening, and when Germany was beginning to get overly friendly and overly supportive of the Muslims at the expense of Israel in both Gaza and the West Bank, that a judgment would come on Germany based on Genesis 12.
Yeah.
This is in part God's judgment on the European Union giving this money, giving this economic aid to radical Islamic regimes that are basically terrorist and terrorist sponsoring, including getting in bed with Hamas. Well, they are reaping what they sowed. Read Obadiah 14. This is God's judgment. It is God's judgment because they have touched the apple of his eye. It is in part God's judgment.
Jacob, Russia suspended the Nord Stream pipeline momentarily, at least for now, because of summer maintenance. The key date's going to be July 22nd, next week, if they even open it again. But fears are that Russia's cutting them off. What does that mean for Germany? I mean, they get no gas, H2. That's not even happening anytime soon. So the Nord Stream pipeline is not going to happen in July. What's the ramifications?
Had the proper policies been enacted by the EU, you would have had super tankers with liquid gas, where you can liquefy natural gas, coming out of Philadelphia and New York, but particularly Philadelphia and Baltimore, sailing to Hamburg. A very high percentage, and those super tankers are huge. A very high percentage of Europe's energy needs in the area of natural gas could have been met from North America without the political blackmail of Russia, had the right policies been pursued.
Very true.
But you had the Obama regime, and you had, or basically anti-American, and you had the EU. And this is what you've got as a result, a mess.
Yeah.
There's no easy way out of it.
Yeah. It looks like Germany's, they're going to use arenas, sports arenas or halls or conference centers. Yeah. I mean, we're heading toward a time where probably unprecedented for Germany since the war. In places, but Macron is also in trouble. France is also in trouble. They're turning off the lights, at least the street lights now. I think David Lister said they even said that there may be energy crisis for homes, but at least for now is they're not going to have the lights on the streets.
And they're a country that has 70% nuclear electrical production.
That's interesting.
70% of electricity is nuclear.
Yeah. So they're going to have energy shortages in the autumn. So I think Russia, it really has the EU over a barrel on this because of lack of planning, as you said.
Yeah, and you're fighting about the Ukraine, but like Biden's policies, you're lining Putin's pockets to fight the war.
Yeah.
None of this is necessary, and none of it is sane.
That's right. Yeah.
But it shows you the insanity of the EU and of leaders like Macron.
Yes, absolutely. And he just won. Again, he's won the election. So people want
narrowly, if you notice Schwab's people, like Andrews, well, perhaps in Australia it's a bit different with Andrews and Ardern in New Zealand, but people like Trudeau in France or Macron, Trudeau in Canada and Macron in France, they're almost minority governments. You know what I mean? They don't have a strong mandate.
You're right.
They're minority government. They're precarious governments.
You're right.
So they have to engage in political strong-arm tactics the way Macron did. I mean, the way Trudeau did. Trudeau basically froze the bank accounts of protests,
Yeah.
of truckers who were protesting, and he just like a fascist, an open fascist, a man who should be criminally charged by the Canadian people, removed from office by the Canadian people, and criminally charged.
Immediately.
You know, that guy should die in an igloo up on the northern end of Baffin Island, an igloo with bars on it. That's where they should put him for the rest of his life, which hopefully would not be too long unless he repents, which is not likely either. This is how evil this man is. But when you have these people with these minority governments, to preserve power, they result to draconian exercises of authoritarianism. Let's understand something. When Hitler came to power, he only came to power electorally because of a coalition with the Zentrum, the Catholic Party of Bavaria. The Catholic Church got Hitler elected in Germany. But it was not a big minority in the Reichstag. What did he do? He did Hitler was a socialist. Yes. National Socialist Workers' Party. What is Macron? He's a socialist. What is Trudeau? He's a socialist. What do socialists do in these situations? They grab power. They suspend human rights. What they're doing in Holland is unbelievable. What Rufen is doing in Holland is unbelievable.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a moment, but let's circle the wagons on this, Jacob, because it's not just Europe, but it's one of the largest islands right there off the coast of India, Sri Lanka. 21 million people are absolutely starving, no fuel, crisis, shortages. We were here on Friday. We got off. We came offline on Friday. Started getting information that there was people storming into the palace, and most likely the president was going to flee on Saturday morning. We got word that he fled. He's gone. People are, it's really crazy pictures of people swimming in the palace and going in, taking pictures and doing all kinds of stuff. But this is part of the Green Revolution. Sri Lanka is in big trouble because energy crisis and no food.
Yep. And it was in part triggered by green policies.
Yeah.
By so-called green policies that weren't green. Green policies are not green. There's nothing green about them.
There's nothing green
about them. The only thing green is the dollars that people get paid off and who profit from it, like Chinese companies who make the solar panels. That's the only thing. Or Obama that gave all that money to that company to develop things, and the executives got bonuses and then made contributions.
Yes,
this is Obama, and he got away with it. He got away with it.
Cylinder, yeah. Well,
I hope there's enough room in the igloo for him too, you know.
What about Albania? People are going crazy in Albania. I mean, the problems with the IMF, and they bankrupt the country. North Macedonia.
Look, you see these things happening in small economies, not just in the third world like Ceylon, Sri Lanka, or a semi-third world. Albania is maybe the poorest country in continental Europe.
Yeah.
Not just Albania or Sri Lanka, but a small country like Holland. When you see these things, pandemonium beginning to take place in small countries, it'll eventually spread to big ones unless something happens. Even the things we saw, the suspension of human rights and the abrogation of constitutional principle in Canada and in Australia and in New Zealand, but particularly in Victoria, Australia. It's hard to, I can't consider Australia to be a democracy anymore, and I can't consider Canada to be a democracy anymore, and the United States is teetering, okay? The real target is America and Britain. Let's not forget.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Canada and Australia are just stepping stones to what they really want. Don't ignore when these things happen in small countries.
Yeah.
Because they are very often preludes to what's going to happen on a wider scale.
Yeah. No, you're right. In Netherlands, you mentioned Mark Rutte, the president of the Netherlands, very much one of Schwab's guys, very much a Schwab's guy. Schwab's boasts about him and Trudeau and Macron. He boasts about these three, but he's allowing mayors of certain cities to kick Dutch citizens out of their homes and to be replaced by foreign invaders, basically people coming in, without visas coming in, the alien invaders from the Middle East and Africa, and to allow invaders to stay in their homes, room and board. I mean, it's crazy. Plus these green policies that's going to make the, how do you pronounce it? Hagenwinter, Jacob, the Nazis did, starving kids with the spoons. I've seen pictures. I see a picture.
The little kids not with nothing to eat. Yep.
Yeah, and then Mao did the same thing in China. So we're doing the Holodomor in the Ukraine with Stalin. I mean, we're seeing this again, and it's frightening to see countries like the Netherlands, who are basically kicking farmers out of their land and taking over their land. That's really the end goal of this: take over their land. We're probably going to have a brother from the Netherlands coming in next week to talk a little bit more about this. But it's in Australia, it's in North Macedonia. What about Latin America, Jacob? Did you have a heart for Latin America? You've always had, but now you see it in Panama, you see it in Argentina, you've seen it in Ecuador.
You're seeing two things happening. One, you're seeing the pandemonium about the energy and food costs.
Yeah.
Secondly, you're seeing people resorting to communism. They're doing that in Bolivia. They're doing it now in Colombia, obviously Nicaragua and Venezuela. Brazil is holding out. It is driving people into what? This socialism.
Yeah.
Into this dictatorship.
Yeah.
Well, to the South Americans, I would say, look what it did for Venezuela. You sure that's what you want?
Yeah. Now they have invited China, they invited Russia, at least for Venezuela and Nicaragua. That's what.
And Iran.
And Iran. Yeah.
Biden will do nothing. Biden will do nothing. Well, Biden is nothing. He will do nothing because he is nothing.
And so let's talk about the elephant in the room, because it really is the elephant in the room. China. It has gone completely a serious escalation. Violent bank runs. I mean, violent bank runs, which we have a video on just a moment. So if we go to the video, Tim, we go to the video, China bank runs. All right, let's watch. I don't think it's playing. Maybe that's a technical thing. I don't think it's playing. I'm not sure he sent the video out. There it is. All right.
看到没？大伙看到没？这些媒体啊，中央的爷爷奶奶们，你们看一看，这就是荷兰政府，他们都有公权力，都有暴力机关，那些警察把我们合理维权的主妇，我们要自己合法存款的主妇包围起来了。他们还有黑衣狗、白衣狗，这些人的话就是辅警，就是他们豢养的黑社会。这些人，你看他们，这还是中国的天吗？这还是中国吗？救救这些老百姓，救救这些主妇吧！他们还有黑衣狗、白衣狗，这些。
Are we on? You good? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Well, you're very familiar with China. You've been calling this for a while. China's in trouble economically. Now we're starting to see the ripple effects. It's starting to see the cracks, and now it's busting at the seam. Jacob, when you see this, what do you see? What's your take on this?
Well, I'll speak about those perhaps more qualified than I am in the academic community and so forth who have warned, and then I'll speak from my own experience. Gordon Chang was never right in his timing. I don't think his timing was that good, but his prognostication was. What he said was going to happen is happening. I think he had his timing inaccurate, but his predictions were absolutely spot on. He was not the only one. He's simply the best known one in the West. From my own experience, I was in China one time, meeting with the underground church, the house churches. I shouldn't even say this. And there was a party conference in Beijing, and King was there, and they closed down the internet nationally. Now, Chinese people I knew how to get online through the dark web and relay email through Hong Kong and things like that. But they actually could close down the web and control all the media and things like that. I saw how the government was preparing for some kind of a national control. What they have always feared is another Tiananmen Square. Now, 1.3 billion people have watched Tiananmen Square on television and on the internet. 1.3 billion. It is the official policy of the Chinese government that it never happened.
I've been told this. People have gone to China and then they mentioned Tiananmen Square. Some people don't even know what happened, or they just think it's some kind of Western invention.
That's correct. That is correct. The game that the party played, remember, communism is gone. It's dead. First time I was in Shanghai, where my father used to live, first time I was in Shanghai, I remember driving through the tunnel to Pudong, the new high-rise skyscraper section of Shanghai across from the Bund. And I was going through the tunnel, and there were Pepsi Cola adverts on the toll booths. And they still had the billboards of Chairman Mao and everything next to the Pepsi Cola adverts. But it was absurd. It was completely absurd to call it a capitalist country. A communist country. It was cutthroat capitalism. Cutthroat. Wow. Now, the party was able to let that happen. What the party did was, as long as the people prosper, we can stay in power. The reason this happens is this. When communism, this is me, this is not Gordon Chang. I'm speaking from my own experience in Asia. When Mao fell, even though it was still taught in the textbooks in school, the Red Book was no longer the Constitution or the Holy Bible of China, okay? It all began when Nixon first went there, of course. Okay, So what happened? How do you fill in this vacuum? As China expanded economically, when countries prosper, they want more political freedom. That was Tiananmen Square. But something the Western mind does not understand. In Chinese culture, in Taiwan, in Singapore, among the Malaysian Chinese and among the Indonesian Chinese, even among the diasporic Chinese, you have a philosophical influence of Confucianism. It's like you can't consider Holland to be a Protestant country anymore, but there's still Calvinism in the cultural mentality of the people, okay? It's something like that. Or most people in Poland or in Italy or Ireland now don't go to Mass anymore, but they're still Catholic in their cultural identity and their way of thinking. Well, China is the same. It is still very much Confucianism. Confucianism was suppressed under Mao. They tried to replace Confucianism with the Red Book with Mao, but Mao's gone. Confucianism is based on the idea, in part, of a benevolent dictator. As long as the people can prosper and the dictator is benevolent and people have a high standard of living, the people are good without having freedom, as long as the standard of living and a relative freedom is provided by the dictator. This was the People's Action Party in Singapore. It's how Lee Kuan Yew's party kept power in Singapore. It was because of the Confucian mentality, okay? Now, what happens, and this goes back to the aftermath of the period of the warring states in China. I won't go there now, but what happens when the emperor has no clothes? In Western terms, what happens when the party can no longer deliver what it had been? What happens when the economy goes south?
Yep.
They have never told you China's growth, China's growth, China's growth. The overlooked realities of China's growth. I'll just enumerate some of them. And these are things that I've seen with my own eyes. Okay. One, can you imagine building ghost towns?
Yeah.
Ghost cities. You build ghost cities that are uninhabited and uninhabitable with infrastructure and the utilities. And yet the capital investment of the banks and the people are invested in these ghost towns.
Yeah, nobody lives
on
in
a massive scale. That was the Evergrande thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Two, the Chinese exports to the United States, that is a half-truth. These American companies and Western companies you see in China, 50% of what they're selling is sold in China. And it's American companies like Apple and what's the other one, Walmart and stuff. Yeah. But the companies are American owned. You understand? It's not what people really think. Not in the way they think about it. Okay, there's that. Thirdly, the level of corporate debt, corporate debentures in China of not the foreign corporations, but the Chinese corporations. The level of corporate debt is 2 to 3 times higher in some cases, but on the average, at least double what you have in the West. These big Chinese companies you see, TikTok, all of them, the corporate debt level is double what the average Western corporation is. That's the third reality people don't tell you about. Fourth reality, you want to talk about deficits? Nobody knows. But Japan, it's at least 200% of GDP, public debt. In China, it's at what we know, it's at least 340%. It might be higher. That is central government debt and provincial government debt. Now, notice those riots. They were reacting against the provincial government. They were not challenging the party yet.
That's
what
right.
The party is afraid of that they're going to turn against the party. They're trying to keep it as a provincial issue, not as a national issue.
Yeah.
There's another thing you have to understand about China. Okay. The fourth, did I say fourth, or the fourth thing is?
This is the fourth. Yeah.
The fourth thing, their infrastructure is not what the West thinks. Oh, they've got these super trains and they better than Amtrak. Well, of course it's better than Amtrak. America's airplane oriented. It's not. American railroads make money because of freight. Unlike European railroads, American railroads are profitable because of freight and because of the environmental friendliness, and because you can move more tonnage with less fuel on a train and less particulate emissions by rail than you can by anything else. So American railroads make money, but not the passenger railroads. America is plane oriented. China is train oriented because you have corridors. The corridor in America is Boston to Washington, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore. That's the corridor. You know, the other corridors like Detroit to Chicago, or the West Coast from Seattle to the Bay Area, Frisco and Oakland, and down to LA and San Diego. Those are huge distances.
Yeah.
People aren't going to take a train. They might take a train from New York to Washington, but they're not going to take a train from Seattle to San Diego. They're going to fly. So they got this rail system because there's the air traffic system is so bad. Okay. So you got this, and it impresses people. But there's a lot of technical problems with those trains. They try to blame foreign imports and the French and all this kind of stuff for the fact that the railroads don't work that good, but a lot of times they don't work that well. You know, people are overly impressed by China. Now, I admit what they did was incredible, but a lot of it is hollow. A lot of it, you build something big, but there's nothing in it. A big shell, but not that much in it. I compare China to the Millennium Dome in England. They built this big, huge dome for the Millennium, but there wasn't much in it that anybody cared about. Well, but the dome was big. That's China. Another thing in China, though, the big one I've been warning about, other than the corporate debt and the national and the government debt, public debt, is the shadow banking system. I have said many times it is a house of cards, and it cannot possibly survive fractional banking. This fractional reserve banking will not allow it to survive. They have too much exposure. Fractional reserve banking we even have big banks like Deutsche Bank are in trouble.
Yeah.
We've had bank bailouts in the United States. We've had ones go to the wall with the investment banks like Kuhn Loeb and things like that. But it's nothing like the shadow banking system in China.
Yeah.
It is a house of cards, and it is beginning to collapse. And when it does, it'll have social and political ramifications. What the government and the party are trying to do now in China is keep it regional. That's their first strategy.
Yeah.
Keep it with the provincial governments. Second thing they're trying to do is divert national attention away from what's happening internally by wagging the dog, by war threats with Taiwan and things of this nature.
Yeah.
That's the second thing they're trying to do. Third thing they're trying to do, their third way of coping with it, was what they did when their stock market collapsed. They just closed it. They don't even declare a bank holiday. They just ban trading.
Yeah.
Well, now they're banning bank withdrawals, and they're using COVID and pandemics to stop people from being able to go out. They're using social credit scoring from preventing people from withdrawing their savings, which is all reinvested by the banks into these ghost towns. China is not what people think, but it is big.
Yeah.
It's big.
these banks are insolvable. We're talking about the four big banks in China, and the provincial banks, the local banks are insolvable, and people are demanding it. And you have these. I think we looked at a form, but it was translated. If you have 50,000 yuan, you'll get your money. I guess supposedly today. If you have more than 50,000 yuan, you'll get your money at some point later. And if you have high interest, you won't get that interest. So these banks have no money. They're not going to be able to pay it out. People are demanding it. Now, people that had money in Chinese banks, Jacob, the other domino is this. What about Canada with the connectivity issues that they had, that they shut down some of their banks? I'm not saying that's what it is, but there's a lot of Canadian investment in Chinese banks as well as American.
It's going to have ramifications for the international economy.
Huge, isn't it?
Now, the other thing is, people may eventually get their money.
Yeah.
In inflated yuan.
They're just going to print more.
Yeah, you will get the money, but it won't be worth anything.
Oh, goodness.
We gave you your money.
Yeah. It's a huge disaster for the CCP if this goes through, because I don't think there's a way of stopping it.
Yeah, there is a sixth factor in Chinese internal vulnerability. Tibet and the Hmong in the West. The Hmong consider themselves to be an occupied country. Tibet considers itself to be an occupied country.
Yeah.
What you've got, like in Canada with Quebec and the rest of Canada, the English-speaking provinces, what you have in Ireland with Ulster, Northern Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland, you've got the same thing in China, only it is much more of a powder keg, much more of a tinderbox.
Yeah, no doubt. So if anybody wants to, for further information, just put in the hashtag CCP or bankrun, hashtag bankrun, and you'll get a lot of this information. A lot of it's in Chinese, of course. Hopefully they're translated. But one that's really interesting is reported in China. There's about 100 organizations that are basically collectively telling people, stop paying your mortgage because they paid for properties that haven't been built yet because the developers are bankrupt. So
that's right.
It is a huge problem. So, Jacob, my question is: Jinping is supposed to be crowned people's leader in August. He's supposed to be the next Mao forever.
Yeah.
How is this gonna play? Is he in sort of trouble? There's a big fight within the CCP. Who controls it? Most people think it's gonna be Jinping forever, but in light of this, he
wants to be the next Mao.
Yeah.
But let's understand something. After the Cultural Revolution, you had the gang. Then there was Zhou and Lai. Then you had the Gang of Four. There is no political stability in socialist regimes.
Yeah.
Especially a socialist regime that has a economy that cannot really be called socialist. Just look at Russia. You had, after Stalin died, Khrushchev. Then Khrushchev was deposed. Remember, by Brezhnev.
Yep.
These regimes have an inherent instability in themselves because economic reality comes home to roost. Sooner or later, the economy goes. That is why Gorbachev came to power. You understand? You had Stalin, Lenin to Stalin, Stalin to Khrushchev, Khrushchev to Brezhnev and those guys.
Yeah.
And Suslav and the rest of them, Alexei Kosygin and the rest of them, the old men. Then after that, eventually, what did you have?
Yeah.
Taranko was gone, and Andropov was gone. Economic reality came home.
Yeah.
Gorbachev,
yeah.
Same thing is going to happen in China. Economic reality will create the political instability, and they always look for somebody who can handle it.
Yeah, no doubt. Jacob, we're getting some news coming up right now. This is like really breaking. National Railway strike has been approved in the States. I guess trains in America are going to come to a halt next week. It's been approved. It's not guaranteed. It's been approved. 57,000 rail workers across the United States slated to walk off on Monday due to poor conditions, working conditions, and low wages. I mean, inflation has hit through the roof. You were talking about trains. You were talking about the railway system in America and how profitable it is. Well, I suppose under Biden's economy, it is not profitable anymore to do this, and they're ready to walk away. I mean, what does that
If
do?
the railroads go on strike nationally, America comes to a halt.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Forget the Teamsters unions. Forget the rest of it.
Yeah.
If the railroads, don't forget, in the United States, over 700 miles approximately, it is cheaper to piggyback a tractor trailer, to drive it onto a flatbed rail car, or to use a flexivan or a container. You see where you are. In Devore, you see those huge railroad yards.
Yeah.
Where the Burlington and Northern and the Union Pacific come together.
Okay, yeah.
Look what is it? Just miles of flatbed rail cars with containers on them.
Yeah.
Okay. Every one of those represents one less truck on the interstate. There is no way the Teamsters or the trucking companies can handle that volume. No possible way. It would be a truly, truly catastrophic event. But this month, the 30th of this month, the trains are going on strike in England.
Oh.
Locomotive engineers are walking out.
Oh, my goodness. I did not know that. Oh, my. Huge news. Huge news. Yep. And I guess we can guess as we get to the end of our episode here, we'll talk about the war. The economy is huge, but let's talk about the war real quick, Jacob. President of Serbia says all hell's about to break loose. He's blaming NATO and pushing this issue. Obviously, Serbia, he remembers quite well what NATO's done in Yugoslavia and Afghanistan and other places, especially what they did to the Balkans and Belgrade. Does he have a point? I mean, is he pro-Russian more than anything else? Because he's not pro-NATO. He's definitely not pro-NATO, but he's warning about a war that NATO's been.
The Serbs are the people of Tito, and they would have a predisposition towards Putin, not because they like Putin, but because Russians are Slavs, and they have the Byzantine Church, the Eastern Orthodox. They have a common cultural heritage. The people in Serbia remember the war crimes of Clinton, Tony Blair, Wesley Clark, and Javier Solano. The war crimes. It is illegal for a NATO country to attack another country unless it attacks a NATO country. What was done by Wesley Clark, who was commander of NATO military commander, Javier Solano, the EU socialist, Tony Blair, and Bill Clinton, and Madeleine Albright, who's now dead. They were guilty of war crimes. I may not have liked Milosevic. I may not have liked what the Serbs did. But the Kosovo Liberation Army were Muslims aligned with Al-Qaeda, and they were worse. And we bombed the Serbs to protect the first cousins of Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, I remember the bombing.
And the Croats are the descendants of the Ustashi Nazis. No, I didn't always agree with the Kurds. Kurds are like the Serbs are like what they did, but I understand why they did it. They were protecting Europe from the Islamic invasion.
Yes.
They were mistreated. Now, again, I realized the people identified him with Tito and all the communists, and after the Cold War. Before those war crimes, most people in Russia were sympathetic to the United States and to the West. People in Russia. I remember going around in Russia, and there were statues with the heads of Lenin chopped off and stuff like this.
I remember that, yeah.
I saw it. And there was a pro-Western sympathy among the Russian people because they hated communism. They hated what the Sovietism was. It ruined Russia, among other countries.
Yeah.
But that was flipped. by Clinton and Blair
Mm.
and Solano and Wesley Clark.
Yeah.
Those men are war criminals. Now, I don't particularly like the rapprochement taking place between the Serbian government and Putin by any means. But what the man is saying, and I'm no fan of Putin, but what the man is saying is absolutely true.
Yeah, I hate to agree with them, but you're right, Jacob. Absolutely true. What they did, they bombed the Danube River. They killed a lot of these.
Only that, but a stealth plane was downed. But they managed to figure out the radar frequencies, and a stealth plane was downed, and Russia got that technology, courtesy of Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Why does Russia have stealth technology? Thank Clinton.
Yeah. A lot of it falls on his lap, no doubt. Jacob, real quick, Henry Kissinger came out this week. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, maybe yesterday. We should expect direct conflict with Russia by mid-August. So he gave sort of a timeline on this. Is he hyperbole? Is he concerned? He's a big New World Order guy anyway, so I'm not sure where his take is on this. But
he was New World Order before Schwab.
Yeah, that's right. He's Schwab's disciple. Kissinger's disciple, no doubt. The Duma is meeting today, July 15th, regarding Lithuania and the Kaliningrad blockade. So you have some things in the hopper that may be a lot more serious than we actually give credit to.
The fact that Sweden and Finland are now NATO.
Yeah, that's huge. That
is, Putin got more than he bargained for, and he's getting more and more desperate to fight, despite the fact that Biden has lined his pockets.
Yeah. Jacob, what about this this nuclear sort of response in New York City?
I have not seen that since I was 5 years old. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, did I see that?
Wow.
I have not seen that since I was 5 or 6 years. Not since the Cuban Missile Crisis have I seen that. What does that tell you?
Yeah, it's really, it's not that it's unprecedented, but it's been a long time.
And you can thank Biden and the morons who voted for him. Yeah. Because whether you like Donald Trump or not, if he had been president, it never would have happened.
That's right. Yeah, this is New York City Emergency Management Department released a video instructing what to do in a nuclear attack. They had maps, all that stuff. I watched the video. Close your window in case of a nuclear attack. A lot of these things won't work, just like the mask won't work, but based on science. But they're talking about, in case of this happens, and even I showed you a picture of Menlo Park in Edison, New Jersey, with signs, nuclear attack, get down, get in this building. It is quite shocking to me. I've never seen it.
Desperate people do desperate things.
Yeah.
And Putin is getting desperate in certain respects. He is actually acquiring drone technology from Iran. Now, there have been Christians, students of prophecy, who have postulated the possibility that the reason you see no specific mention of the United States or North America or the Far East, much of the Far East in prophecy, is because they will have been exterminated in a nuclear exchange beforehand.
I have heard
those who've said that. There are those who have said that. Now, I know there's all kinds of crackpots saying stupid things about American prophecy, this ridiculous book, The United States of Israel, by Jackie Elnor. That book sounds like it was written by somebody in a mental institution. Okay, absolutely ridiculous book. Absurd. A mixture of British Israelism and just delusion. It's a hideous book. But, during times of crisis, expect hucksters to come up and capitalize on it and try to produce books that are stupid. And that's what that book is. It's just a very stupid book that was irresponsible for anyone to even publish. It's a stupid book. but you have this kind of thing happening. In fact, I think we're going to do a segment on it soon, that book, or a review of it. It's so absurd. But why is the United States missing from prophecy? Why is Canada, Australia, why are these countries not including it, or Latin America? Why are they? Or people try to spiritualize it and say, well, that's the coastlands with no proof.
Yeah. Or Babylon.
Yeah. Okay. But these are indeed issues.
Yeah. Jacob, real quick before we finish, let's talk about Draghi. Draghi in Italy. You know, Mario Draghi's out. He's out. Just like Bojo came out last week. Now he's out. There's dominoes that seem to be falling. We can talk a lot about Draghi and what he did with the way he handled the virus, the way he printed trillions of dollars, especially putting Europe in a very bad situation. The European Central Bank commissioner back in 2021, he pushed to print more money and all that thing. So anyway, he steps down, basically broke. Basically European was broke, Italy's broke. These people are finally seeing the danger, I think, of a man like this. So now you got the seven. You got a picture of the G7, and let's play a little game here. Out of the G7 that met this year, Bojo's out. Now Draghi's out. Now you got some. You got Macron left. You got Trudeau left. You got Olaf left, and you got the Japanese Prime Minister left. Now the other guy was Abe was killed last week. Now you got four. You got five out of the guys left. Two out of the seven are gone. Let's play a little game. Jacob, percentages. Who's next? These dominoes seem to be falling. Yeah. Give me some percentages here.
Okay. Going back to Draghi, first of all, your first point, whether or not you like Mr. Berlusconi, and I know a lot of people didn't, thought he was corrupt, he was not incompetent. At least he knew what he was doing.
He was sharp.
He knew what he was doing. Draghi doesn't know what he's like Biden. He's a man who just doesn't know what he's doing.
He knew how to spend money and burn it. That's what he did.
He's like, he just doesn't know what he's doing. That vein, he's in the Obama Biden vein. It's just the man doesn't know what he's doing.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Now, let's look at this. The assassination of Mr. Abe is a bigger deal than many people realize. Many people, and again, Muriel has a branch in Japan. I've spent a fair amount of time in Japan. My Japanese is terrible. I only speak a very little bit of it, but I know Japanese believers and things like this, and we have meetings there from time to time, and we have a Japanese website. But talking about Japan, there are a lot of people who think he was the real power on back of the throne, even though he was no longer the prime minister. He was still the national political figure that was holding the country together. He realized the problem of China. He realized the importance of Japan's relationship with the United States. He realized the situation with Taiwan's security being vital to Japan. And he realized, obviously, the threat of North Korea. He realized those things. And his assassination was, it may have been by this one crazy person. I don't know. I don't know if it was or if it was something by North Korean intelligence. I have no proof it was. But I know it is not good for Japan, and it's not good for the West. This present prime minister does not have the grip of governance that Mr. Abe had.
That's right.
Weaker than Abe. But now let's look at the other ones. Macron, borderline government, almost you've got Trudeau, a minority government. Notice these other guys have very narrow coalition leads, or they actually have minority governments. None of them are in a strong position. Again, we saw Newsom visit the West Wing when Biden was out of the country, looking for what he hopes to be a new office, while trying to look presidential because they smell blood. None of these people are in a strong position. Biden is not. Trudeau is not. Macron certainly isn't. He narrowly won.
Yeah.
had Le Pen not been her father's daughter, she would have won.
Yeah.
She would have, had she not been her father's daughter, she would have won. The other thing is, I didn't like Angela Merkel, but she was in a stronger position politically than the present German coalition, the present government. None of them are in a strong position electorally. That leaves us with Great Britain. What is going to happen? I would beseech people, particularly people in English-speaking countries like the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, even Ireland, South Africa, British Commonwealth countries. Britain is still more important than many people realize. It's still more important than many people realize. It may be the junior partner in the special relationship, but it is a vital partner in the special relationship. Okay. Second to New York, London is the main financial center of the world. Not Beijing yet. London is still number 2, more so than Frankfurt. Okay. It would be a disaster if Penny Morant were to become the prime minister. She would be maybe worse, a worse disaster than Theresa May. She would not only be a failed prime minister, but she's not really a conservative. She is sort of like a rhino woman. She's like, if I would make a comparison, she's like Murkowski and like Snow in Maine. She's like Snow was. She's like Murkowski. Republicans in name only, but very much to the left. Okay. Well, that's what you've got. She is a front runner, pro-Islamic, pro-LGBTQ, not ideologically conservative, a white liberal woman who's in the Conservative Party. I pray to God she doesn't get the position. Then there's Rishi Sunak. He would be the first prime minister of Britain who was not, at least nominally, Christian. Benjamin Disraeli was a Jew, but he professed the Christian faith. That in itself would make a sociological and a spiritual statement about the country. He was not very good in government. He was not very good in the government.
He was the ex-chief, correct?
Yeah. Yes, like Treasury Secretary.
Yeah, very important. Yeah.
The best of the three may be Liz Truss. She's a so-called true blue Tory. She's a former liberal, a liberal who became conservative, like Churchill.
Yeah.
Churchill in his youth was a liberal who became a conservative. Well, she is in the Churchillian vein, like me, like David Horowitz, like a lot of people in Montreal, like David Lister, somebody who had been in the political left who moved to the right. She'd be that. She'd probably be the best. But please pray that the best person for Britain and for the church in Britain and for Britain's relationship with Israel and America becomes the prime minister. And I hope it is not Morant. I hope it is not Penny Morant.
Yeah. Some people have mentioned Steve Baker, Jacob.
Yeah, but I don't think he's a front runner.
Okay. Now, give me some percentages of those 7 that are in the G7. 2 are out, 5 left. Who's the next one?
If Obama's position is right, Biden may be.
All right. Well, higher percent. I would tend to agree. I think out of all those on thin ice, which they're all on thin ice, you're absolutely
They're all
right.
on thin ice.
Yeah, maybe Kishida. It's probably the most on thicker ice since Abe was assassinated.
Yeah, that's right. He's got a sympathy vote of some kind.
Right, exactly. So now you have the other 4, and boy, Jacob, I think Biden's on thin ice. I think he looks very, very weak. Now, let's finish up with this. He's in Israel. The real reason he's there, by the way, I just got this before we were on. He has declared, where to go? Right here. While we were on the air, he backs this 2-state solution. He has visited East Jerusalem. He's heading to Saudi Arabia. On the way there, he said, for the first time, a U.S. president visited East Jerusalem sends a signal. Oh, this is from the article. Israel, that part of the city could be the future capital of the Palestinian state. So this is
not only that. When he drove through East Jerusalem, normally the presidential limousine has an American flag and an Israeli flag, or the flag of whatever country it's in, on the front of the vehicle. He took off the Israeli flag.
Oh man. Oh man.
That sent a signal to the Muslims.
Yeah.
That's where he's really at. Now, understand the masquerade and the media manipulation. Party donorship, the Democratic Party in California, New York, Chicago, Las Vegas is still very much reliant on Jewish donors. Okay. A lot of the players in the Democratic Party, like Klain, one of Biden's handlers, or Axelrod, who got Obama elected, these people are left-wing Jews. Okay. In order to placate the Jewish vote in light of the anti-Israel policies or positions of the squad in the Democratic Party, including by Sanders, who's an anti-Zionist Jew, but certainly Alexander Ortega-Cortez and Olmert and Tlaib and Presley and the other ones. In order to placate the Jewish American vote, he had to misrepresent himself as being supportive of Israel. So for the time being, he refused to remove the Iranian Revolutionary Guards from the International Terror Watch List, which had been on the agenda to do. He's talking about the Iranian threat. He goes to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial, and of all things, he says we have to remember the honor of the Holocaust. What a stupid thing to say.
He's lost it. He's lost it. He's gone.
He's just lost it. He's just
goodness.
He's out of it. Look, he's like Obama. He's really an enemy of Israel.
Yeah.
He's not a friend. He's like Obama. Obama was an enemy of Israel, which he proved with the UNESCO vote. Yeah. Not only that, he's again taking our money and giving it to the Palestinian Authority without them having to revoke their pro-terrorist policies, rhetoric, and curriculum in schools being taught to kids. He's reversing all of Donald Trump's positions, all of Donald Trump's directives that you must cease any kind of promotion of hate or terror against Israel and against Jews in order to receive American aid. He's wiped that out. He's going back and funding Jew hatred, as the EU is. Yeah. Now he's gone to Saudi Arabia, and when they asked the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia about Khashoggi, now I didn't like Khashoggi, and I didn't want his death, but he did have an American passport, which he never should have had, but he did have one.
Right.
He just laughed it off. Biden has gone there to lick boots. Well, he can lick all he wants. Saudi Arabia's output capacity is not going to increase by much.
No. And they're already preparing for membership with, I guess, to join BRICS along with Turkey and Egypt. That's their plan. Right. That's going to be huge. Jacob, real quick before we finish and take the questions, while he's in Riyadh, while he's in Saudi Arabia doing his song and dance, calling, in Jerusalem, calling the Holocaust an honor, which is by far crazy, reaffirms yesterday, the White House reaffirms the deal with Iran still on, $1 trillion by 2030. So they're going to allocate $1 trillion to Iran in 8 years.
To a terrorist regime.
Can you believe?
And when they're yelling about homosexual rights, the Iranians are hanging homosexuals, among others. The hypocrisy of the Democratic Party, of the New York Times, of the Washington Compost, of the mainstream media, of social media, it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
They're the real criminals.
They are the real criminals. So I say a war in Yemen will continue, Lebanon, Iraq.
I was just going to mention that. the threat to Saudi Arabia from Yemen and the abandonment of Saudi Arabia by Joe Obama is pushing Saudi Arabia further out of the American orbit.
Incredible.
The Abrahamic Accords under Trump kept them sort of in it, but with Joe Obama, with Biden, if Saudi Arabia goes into this supposed alternative with India, Brazil, these other countries, it is not going to be good for the United States.
No. This is a real shake in the East-West relationship, and we've seen it go further and further apart. So, Jacob, let's put you under fire. Let's finish off here. Jacob Prash, rapid fire. Here are the questions. With Biden turning his back on Israel and standing with their enemies, how much will God put up with America, and how will God deal with America if this doesn't stop?
He will deal with America the way he's dealt with other countries that have touched the apple of his eye. Right now, for political reasons, Biden is not able to go as far as he wishes against Israel, but he's going as far as he can with the election pending.
Yeah. Has America reached a point that Judah did in Jeremiah, in the time of Jeremiah, where we can no longer pray out of God's judgment?
We have. I will be addressing that on Word for the Weekend. We have reached a point where I knew since 1983, we've reached a point where, because of non-therapeutic abortion alone, the judgment of God on the Western world, not just America, the Western world, is inevitable. The question is when, and will the Lord tarry?
What's your take on the new Russian Poseidon superweapon? It holds 6 100 megaton torpedoes. If this was launched in the Gulf, would cause major tsunamis and threaten huge catastrophe throughout the world. This is, of course, Russia's Poseidon superweapon.
Russia has claimed to have the lead in hypersonic weapons. The United States is presently trying to catch up. However, we also know that the Ukraine has shown that Russian claims about its military prowess and technology has not exactly been what they were making it out to be to the rest of the world, trying to intimidate people or trying to get other countries to buy their hardware. They overstated what they had. But any kind of weapon of nuclear of nuclear ordnance that can cause tsunami is a disaster. But again, it's always going to be a two-way street.
Yeah. All right. Since Biden sold off all of Americans' oil reserves, I don't know if all of them, but just reading the question, all of the oil reserves meant for wartime. What is this going to mean for America if America finds itself in a war?
In the short term, it will be highly problematic. However, if we had a responsible government again, in a sense, I said about 4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, that the strategic oil reserves, while America should keep them, they become somewhat redundant as long as we were fracking. As long as we were fracking, we were not as reliant upon them. The problem is, A, we're not fracking, and B, Biden is selling it to China and trying to sell it off to get oil prices under control that he caused to go up.
Very good. Jacob, are people going to tolerate here in America more well, not America here, but I'm just assuming in America, but let's just say anywhere in the world. Are people going to tolerate any more mandates, wearing masks, distancing? What will happen to people where they say they're not going to comply with these mandates?
They will not be able to push it to the same degree they did the first time. They're going to have problems re-implementing it. Okay. But again, in their political desperation, they are going to re-implement it if they can. China is doing that again to stop the bank runs or to help try to reduce the bank runs. And of course, in the United States, the Democratic Party wants to retard voting in November. So they will do everything they can to push it as an act of political desperation, but it is simply a reflection of their corruption.
All right, this is an interesting question, Jake. It's about tennis. Do you not think tennis has more transgender sport players unnoticed than any other sport? I did not know that, but there's a lot of...
Tennis was one of the first sports, going back to, what was her name, Navratilova?
Yeah, Navratilova.
Was one of the first sports that began accommodating this whole idea of lesbianism and homosexuality and transsexuality. It was the first sport that pioneered this with Navratilova.
Yeah, Martina
So what you see now is a natural degeneration of what was incipient back in her day.
Interesting. Jacob, AOC has been speaking out against Democrats. Will the Democrats like Pelosi, Schumer turn on her? Will there be any impact if they do?
Political preservation of the establishment is always going to be the number one priority. What the Democrats have done is try to emphasize the common threat to all of them, the common enemy in Trump. Their only hope for unity is based on a common fear of any kind of a Republican, or particularly a conservative Republican resurgence. That is what can unify the party. But otherwise, they're as antagonistic towards each other as rhinos are to conservatives within the Republican Party. Same thing. The populists against the ideologues.
Yeah, well said. Last one, Jacob. Xi Jinping seems to be welcoming a war since China economy is tanking. Is this deja vu like World War I, looking more like World War III?
I have made the comparisons with World War I before, what took place in Sarajevo, Bosnia, and I don't think it was a misplaced comparison. China wags the dog. I always point back to the shootout on the Arma River in 1968, when Russia and China were collaborating with North Vietnam against the Americans and Australians. Okay, at the peak of the Cold War, when they were both supporting North Vietnam, they shot it out with each other on the Arma River when Mao needed to get the aftermath of the Cultural Revolution under control in order to secure power. China is a master at wagging the dog, and China will wag the dog again if it has to preserve the party's power.
Amen. All right, Jacob, you're not under fire anymore. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That concludes our episode with Catching Up with Jacob. We thank you so much for sending your questions. And if we like this format, we'll put Jacob under fire again next week. But, he did pretty good about rapid fire. So, Jacob, I don't think we can
pray for the outcome of the selection of a party leader in Britain, the next prime minister. Please pray that it's not that Penny Morant woman particularly.
Very interesting, Jacob. All these seven G7s are something's happened along the way. So I don't think it's coincidence. I think God's word is.
Well, look, if Schwab must be an arch agent, he must be an advanced man for the Antichrist. He is an advanced man for the Antichrist. He's somebody sent to prepare the way for Antichrist. I'm convinced that's what Schwab is.
Yeah, we've never seen anybody quite like him. I mean, Kissinger and all these people, but to the degree that this is advanced, Jacob, quite a bit of things. I mean, God's in control, and we
Amen.
So blessed to be with you guys. Jacob Prass, take us home.
Take us home, Lord. Please come and take us home. Mar Anata, come quickly, Lord Jesus. Maranatha. God bless. Preach the gospel. Preach the true gospel to the unsaved.
Amen. Amen. Jacob, thank you for staying up with us. We'll see you.